Welcome to Public Health on Call, a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, where we bring evidence, experience, and perspective to make sense of today's leading health challenges. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes.
This is Lindsay Smith Rogers. Today, how to help more people stop smoking. Professor Joanna Cohen, a Bloomberg Distinguished Professor and Director of the Institute for Global Tobacco Control at Johns Hopkins, speaks with Dr. Josh Sharfstein about tobacco cessation therapies. With a number of her colleagues in the world of tobacco control, Dr. Cohen recently wrote a commentary in the New England Journal of Medicine, arguing that the U.S. Food and Drug Administration can do more to bring new options to help people quit smoking to the market. Let's listen.
Dr. Joanna Cohen, thank you so much for joining me on Public Health on Call. We're going to talk about tobacco and some ideas that you and others are putting forward to improve the tobacco situation in this country. But let's start with where things stand today.
Yeah, well, let me start by saying that most of us have been affected by the death of a family member or friend as a result of smoking tobacco products. And in fact, 1 in 8 U.S. adults smoke, and that's over 30 million people in this country. The highest prevalence is among some of the groups that are affected by the greatest health inequities. Now, some people might not realize this, but over 2/3 of people who smoke cigarettes want to quit, and over half try to quit each year. But the problem is that less than 1 in 10 people who try to quit smoking quit successfully.
So it's true that the rates of smoking have come down somewhat over the last few years. Is that true?
Yeah, we've made a lot of progress, and it's particularly exciting to look at the smoking rates among young people, and they continue to decrease. They're at record low rates right now. So we're really pleased that all of our interventions and policy work has really made a difference.
But at the same time, there are a lot of people still smoking, addicted to nicotine, who want to quit but can't.
That's right. You know, we know that any behavior change is difficult, but it's especially so when addiction is involved. And we currently have 3 different kinds of approved smoking cessation therapies, but no new treatment has been approved in the past 17 years. And while these therapies do improve the likelihood that you'll quit smoking, the effectiveness could be much higher.
We're talking about gum and the patch and some medicines that you can take, right?
Right.
And they help, but maybe there's something better out there.
There has to be something better. They do help, and people who are trying to quit should try those first because they are FDA-approved medications, and they will make a difference, but not for everyone. And, this can be a challenging process, and we're hoping that the FDA can really encourage the development and approval of more therapies to help people quit smoking.
So this gets to this article that you're co-author of in the New England Journal of Medicine, envisioning a world with more options for quitting smoking that are proven to quit smoking. And before we get to some of those details, let's talk about maybe the elephant in the room we haven't talked about, which are electronic cigarettes. And there are people out there who would say, well, there is something else out there. It's electronic cigarettes, and some people are using them to try to quit. How do you feel about where that is right now?
Well, there are a few things to consider. And one is for sure that electronic cigarettes can certainly go through the process of approval through the FDA to be a smoking cessation therapy. And actually, we encourage that in this article. The most recent Cochrane review says that the state of the evidence is that electronic cigarettes are more effective than nicotine replacement therapy at helping people quit based on a handful of studies. But there's still, more work to do. And these products, there's a whole range of products out there. And what we want to learn is which ones are best at helping people quit smoking. How do you use them appropriately? And then they should be going through the FDA's review process to get approved to help people quit.
And so, you can wander into a gas station store and see these kinds of products for sale. Why would you say that it makes sense to go through the FDA process if people can just get them today?
Well, there are a few reasons. First of all, too many people are getting them today in the current regulatory environment, and particularly people who don't use tobacco products are using them at unfortunately high rates, including youth. And we see that even, a significantly high proportion of adults who are using e-cigarettes never used any tobacco products. So we definitely don't want that situation to continue. The only people who should be using e-cigarettes are cigarette smokers who are trying to quit smoking. But there is such a variety of products out there. As you say, you see the ads at gas stations, and they all have different nicotine concentrations. They deliver nicotine in different ways and at different rates. And so we really want to learn what is the most effective product or set of products to help people actually quit smoking and not just be using these products for recreation.
In a way, what I hear you saying is that this isn't about whether electronic cigarettes as a class are good or bad. It's about figuring out whether there is a way to use electronic cigarettes that's going to really help people who are smoking and then really making it available to them in that way.
Right, and making it available just to those people and in a way that informs them how to use the product as well in the most efficient way to help them quit. And then eventually we want to help people get off the electronic cigarettes because it still involves a nicotine addiction, but at least getting off cigarettes is the most important step. And if these products can get through FDA approval, I think clinicians are going to be much more willing to recommend them to their patients. We also have the possibility that these products will be covered by insurance, which will help get them used probably more widely. And also people want to know that the products that they're using are going to be effective. So I think for all those reasons, getting FDA approval as a smoking cessation therapy is absolutely beneficial.
Got it. So now let's open the hood of the FDA. Let's look at some of the details here. And in your article, you talk about the fact that there are really two parts of the FDA that regulate products like these. You have the drug center, which really looks for evidence on smoking cessation. And you have the tobacco center, which oversees the market, which includes these products that you can get today. And your article and your argument is that the drug center should be more open-minded, and you can tell me if this is a fair description, in looking for products and evidence to figure out what might be helpful to smokers. Is that fair?
Absolutely fair. Open-minded and even encouraging, more products to go through the regulatory process. As you say, we are in an Alice in Wonderland, topsy-turvy regulatory space right now, where cigarettes, which are the deadliest form of nicotine delivery, have been subject to limited oversight, whereas products that are marketed to help people quit smoking face far more substantial regulatory barriers. So one of the things that we're calling for is for the drug center to really consider how harmful cigarettes are, that we really need more therapies that are going to be acceptable consumers so they have a broader reach and have greater impact. And at the same time, we want to make sure that appropriate safeguards are in place, that there aren't unintended consequences.
So, I have worked at the FDA before, and I can kind of anticipate what someone from the FDA might say. They'd say, it's really not terribly difficult to come forward with a smoking cessation device. You just have to do a study and show that it helps. Is that so much to ask, Dr. Cohen?
Well, I think it's a bit more than that. Well, you'll be in a better position to explain all the ins and outs. But right now, it's really challenging when e-cigarette companies can just sell their products to anyone with almost no regulation. Obviously that's a lot cheaper than doing a trial and going through all the hoops of getting approval through the drug center. Also, the drug center has been for many years just really holding its requirements for safety and efficacy sort of at the forefront, which they should. But in this case, when we have, over 480,000 people dying from smoking cigarettes each and every year in this country, you have to consider that more in the types of standards you're going to set and the requirements you're going to have for these therapies to help prevent those deaths.
It sounds like that you and your co-authors, who are all leading experts in tobacco control, are calling on FDA to loosen its standards, to keep in mind the number of people dying and maybe, approve products for smoking cessation that aren't quite as safe as the products that are on the market now. Would that be a fair or unfair reading of your piece?
Yeah, no, I think that's a good description. I wouldn't say necessarily completely loosen the standards. They still have to be efficacious. We want them to be even more effective than the therapies currently on the market, because as we started out saying, they're helpful, but they could be much more helpful. There are lots of other things that the FDA can do. For example, e-cigarettes are on the market now. A lot of people are using them. Some of those data that we already have could be part of an application for approval, for example.
So you want products that are more effective, possibly a little less safe, but still much safer than smoking cigarettes, I think is the argument. And then on effectiveness, maybe using some of the data that's already out there. Now, an FDA traditionalist would say that data is not that great and nothing beats a randomized controlled trial. And you don't have to even do that trial for so long. How come this research hasn't happened? Why doesn't the NIH fund it? Why aren't we seeing more good studies for these alternative products to see under what circumstances they could really work for smoking cessation?
Well, I think partly the drug center hasn't had those incentives to make that happen sufficiently. There are also challenges with researchers getting approval to do studies with these products. We've been sort of in a regulatory dead space because products can't be shipped across borders to do these studies. So it's been very challenging. So one of the things, it's a bit more nuanced, but one of the things we mention is that the sort of approvals to ship these products that aren't yet approved, that gets dealt with so that researchers can do the studies.
I appreciate, where you're coming from, because your position and the position of your fellow experts is one that's not likely to make people who are on either side of this long-running debate perfectly happy, right? Some people think, just let people have products that are on the market for electronic cigarettes, encourage them to use it to quit smoking. But to those people, you're saying the data may not be there. There may be better ways to do it. On the other hand, you people who say, look, the FDA process isn't that hard. Get the high quality data and then, the FDA will approve it. And to them, you're saying you still got to make it easier. So it's middle of the road. Anything that's middle of the road on tobacco isn't such an easy place to be.
Well, and I do want to say that the agreement reached by the authors of this piece and the accompanying recommendations are coming from public health experts and opinion leaders whose viewpoints are known to diverge on other important topics. So this piece, I think, is particularly important because it focuses on the need for the drug center to step up and do more to help people quit smoking. And it does represent an area of strong agreement and consensus on actual steps that can be taken from across the field. So I'm really excited that we were able to come together with these recommendations.
Well, Dr. Cohen, thanks so much for explaining them here on Public Health on Call. We'll link to this New England Journal article in the show notes, and it's great to see you.
Thanks. And if anyone wants to quit smoking, you can also call the 1-800-QUIT line, which is 1-800-QUIT-NOW. Thanks so much.
Public Health on Call is a podcast from the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health, produced by Joshua Sharfstein, Lindsay Smith-Rogers, and Stephanie Desmond. Audio production by J.B. Arbogast, Holly Cardinale, Philip Porter, Spencer Greer, and Matthew Martin, with support from Chip Hickey. Distribution by Nick Moran. Production support from Catherine Ricardo. Social media run by Grace Fernandez and Shian Briscoe. If you have questions or ideas for us, please send an email to publichealthquestion@jhu.edu. That's publichealthquestion@jhu.edu for future podcast episodes. Thank you for listening.